A desperate German shepherd limps into a small-town veterinary clinic, her swollen belly betraying her pregnant state, when a routine ultrasound reveals something so disturbing that the vet immediately reaches for his phone to call the police. The scan shows more than just puppies. It exposes a dark secret that will unravel a criminal operation spanning 3 states. But as Dr. James Mitchell stares at the images on his screen, he realizes this case may cost him more than just his license. The autumn wind whistled through the gaps in the old clinic's window frames as Dr. James Mitchell finished cleaning his instruments after a long day of routine checkups. The small veterinary practice in Cedar Grove, Montana, had seen better days, but its worn floors and dated equipment told stories of countless animals saved within these walls. Rain drummed steadily against the roof, creating a melancholic rhythm that matched James's mood as he glanced at the clock. 7:45 p.m., well past closing time. Sarah, his receptionist, had left hours ago, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the gentle whirring of aging medical equipment. The only sounds came from the recovery ward, where 2 cats and an elderly golden retriever rested after their procedures. James liked these quiet moments, when he could work through his paperwork without interruption. Though lately, the solitude felt more like a self-imposed exile than a choice. His fingers unconsciously traced the small scar on his left hand, a permanent reminder of the day everything changed. 3 years ago, he'd been the rising star of one of Seattle's most prestigious veterinary hospitals. But one mistake, one moment of hesitation during a critical surgery, had sent him retreating to this small town where no one knew his name or the weight he carried. The sudden scratch of claws against the clinic's front door jolted him from his reverie. James froze, listening intently. There it came again, more urgent this time, accompanied by a low whimper. He hesitated, remembering the clinic's strict policy about after-hours emergencies, a policy he'd created to protect himself from making another costly mistake. But something about that whimper pulled at him, breaking through the walls he'd carefully constructed. Grabbing his flashlight, James made his way to the entrance. Through the rain-streaked glass, he could make out a large shape huddled against the door. As he pulled it open, a soaking wet German shepherd stumbled inside, her distended belly immediately catching his professional eye. The dog was clearly pregnant and in distress, her breathing labored and her movements uncertain. "Hey there, girl," James said softly, kneeling to her level. The shepherd's brown eyes met his, filled with an intelligence and desperation that made his chest tighten. She wore no collar, but her coat, though wet and matted, showed signs of recent grooming. This wasn't a stray. Someone had cared for this dog, at least until recently. The shepherd limped toward his examination room as if she knew exactly where to go, leaving wet paw prints on the linoleum floor. James followed, his training kicking in as he assessed her condition. The limp suggested a recent injury, and her rapid breathing concerned him. But it was the way she carried herself, protective of her belly, that raised immediate red flags. Under the bright examination lights, James could see bruising along her flanks, partially hidden by her thick fur. The dog remained remarkably calm as he began his examination, as if she understood he was trying to help. When he gently palpated her abdomen, she whined softly, but didn't pull away. "Let's take a look at those puppies, shall we?" James murmured, reaching for his ultrasound machine. The shepherd watched him intently as he applied the gel to her belly, her eyes never leaving his face. As the grainy image appeared on the screen, James's professional demeanor faltered. He adjusted the wand, sure he must be mistaken, but the image remained clear. and deeply disturbing. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his phone. The dog's eyes followed his movement, and for a moment, James could have sworn he saw understanding in their depths. The police would have questions, many of them, and answering them would drag him back into a spotlight he'd spent years avoiding. But what he saw on that screen left him no choice. As James dialed the number, his mind raced through the implications of his discovery. This wasn't just about a pregnant dog anymore. It was about something much darker, something that would force him to confront not only his past mistakes, but also a present danger he never expected to face in Cedar Grove. Officer Elena Martinez answered on the second ring, her voice sharp with professional curiosity. It wasn't often that the town veterinarian called the police at this hour. "Dr. Mitchell, is everything all right?" James took a deep breath, his free hand resting protectively on the shepherd's head. "Elena, I need you to come to the clinic, right away, and bring Detective Cooper with you. What I'm looking at, it's not just about animal abuse anymore. This goes much deeper." The rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows as James waited for the police to arrive. The German shepherd pressed against his leg, seeking comfort or offering it. He wasn't sure which. In the quiet of the clinic, with only the hum of medical equipment as company, James realized that his carefully constructed isolation was about to shatter. Whatever came next would force him to step out of the shadows of his past and into a fight he never expected to face. He could hear sirens in the distance, growing closer. The shepherd's ears perked up at the sound, but she didn't move from his side. James studied the ultrasound images again, making sure to document everything carefully. He knew that what happened next would depend largely on what he could prove, on what story these images could tell. The evidence was clear, but the implications were staggering. The front door chimed as Elena entered, followed by Detective Marcus Cooper, their faces serious in the fluorescent lighting. James gestured them over to the examination table, where the images still glowed on the ultrasound screen. As he began to explain what he'd found, he noticed Cooper's expression darken, while Elena's hand unconsciously moved to the weapon at her hip. "Doc?" Cooper said slowly, his experienced eyes taking in every detail. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" James nodded, pointing to specific areas on the screen. "Without a doubt. And there's more. Look at these older healed fractures, the pattern of the bruising. This isn't random abuse. This was done with a purpose." The German shepherd watched the exchange with alert eyes, her tail giving a single wag when Elena gently patted her head. Despite her obvious discomfort, the dog maintained a quiet dignity that touched something deep in James's heart. Whatever had been done to her, whatever secret she carried, she hadn't lost her capacity to trust. "This changes everything," Cooper muttered, already pulling out his phone. "We're going to need a warrant and backup, lots of backup." He paused, fixing James with a penetrating stare. "Doc, I hope you're ready for what comes next. This isn't going to be simple, and it definitely won't be quiet." James felt the weight of his words, understanding the implicit warning. His peaceful exile in Cedar Grove was about to end, but as he looked down at the brave shepherd beside him, he knew he couldn't walk away. Some fights chose you, and this one had quite literally shown up at his door. "I'm ready," he said, surprised to find he meant it. Whatever it takes to stop this. The next few hours would change everything, not just for James and the German shepherd, but for the entire town of Cedar Grove. What started as a routine ultrasound would uncover a web of crimes that would shake the community to its core and force one haunted veterinarian to finally face the ghosts of his past. Detective Cooper's words hung heavy in the air as he stepped outside to make calls, leaving James alone with Officer Martinez and the German Shepherd. Elena knelt beside the examination table, her dark eyes studying the dog with a mix of compassion and professional assessment. The shepherd's tail gave a gentle thump against the metal surface, despite her obvious discomfort. "She needs a name," Elena said softly, breaking the tense silence. "We can't keep calling her the dog in our reports." James ran his hand along the shepherd's damp fur, considering. "Hope," he said finally. "Given what she's been through, what she's helping us uncover, it fits." The name settled around them like a promise as James began gathering supplies for a more thorough examination. His movements were precise, methodical, a habit ingrained during his residency at Seattle Metropolitan Animal Hospital. The memory of those days sent an unwelcome shiver down his spine. Elena watched him work, her trained eye catching the slight tremor in his hands as he prepared an IV line. "You know," she said carefully, "people in town talk about you, Dr. Mitchell, the brilliant vet who never accepts dinner invitations, who lives above his clinic, who turns away emergency cases after 6. She paused, gauging his reaction. "They wonder what brought you to Cedar Grove." James focused on inserting the catheter into Hope's leg, buying time before responding. The shepherd remained perfectly still, as if understanding the importance of the moment. "People talk about a lot of things in small towns," he replied finally, his voice tight. "Doesn't make their stories true." But even as he spoke, his mind drifted back to that fateful day in Seattle. The emergency surgery that had gone wrong, the promising young police dog that didn't make it off the table. The look of devastation on her handler's face. The investigation had cleared him of negligence, but the whispers remained. Rising star, promising career, such a shame, until the weight of those whispers had driven him here, to this quiet town, where he thought he could outrun his past. The clinic's front door chimed again as Cooper returned, his face grim. "Doc, we've got a problem. The warrant's going to take time. Judge wants more than just ultrasound images, and my contacts in neighboring counties are reporting similar cases. Pregnant dogs showing up with the same modifications." James's jaw tightened as he studied the ultrasound images still glowing on the screen. The tiny shapes within Hope's womb weren't just puppies. They were evidence of something much darker. Surgical alterations, foreign objects carefully placed. A pregnant dog turned into an unwitting smuggling mule. The sophistication of the procedure suggested professional medical training, which made it all the more horrifying. "They'll move their operation if they realize she's here," Elena said, voicing what they were all thinking. "How long before they start looking for her?" The question hung in the air like smoke, making the small examination room feel suddenly claustrophobic. James thought of his quiet life in Cedar Grove, the careful boundaries he'd built, the safety of anonymity. Taking on this case meant risking everything he'd created here. But looking at Hope's trusting eyes, he knew he couldn't walk away. "She can stay here," he found himself saying. "The clinic has security cameras, and I live upstairs. I can monitor her condition, document everything properly for the investigation." He met Cooper's questioning gaze. "Unless you have a better option?" The detective shook his head slowly. "Given the sophistication of what we're dealing with, keeping her at the station might draw too much attention. But Doc, are you sure? This could get complicated fast." Before James could respond, Sarah's voice rang out from the front of the clinic. "Dr. Mitchell, are you still here? Your lights are on." His receptionist appeared in the doorway, her cheerful expression faltering as she took in the scene. The police presence, the injured shepherd, the tension in the room. Sarah Chen had worked at the clinic since before James arrived, her efficient management and quiet compassion making her indispensable. Now she stood frozen, her eyes moving from Hope to the ultrasound images, her medical training clearly helping her understand what she was seeing. "Oh my God," she whispered, moving closer to the examination table. Hope's tail wagged slightly. At her approach, responding to Sarah's gentle energy. "Who would do something like this?" "Someone with medical training," James replied grimly. "Someone who knows exactly what they're doing." He explained the situation briefly, watching Sarah's expression shift from horror to determination. "Then we'll need supplies," she said firmly, already moving toward the storage room. "Extra bedding, monitoring equipment. I can set up the isolation ward in the back. It's more secure, and the windows face the police station." James blinked, caught off guard by her immediate support. "Sarah, this could be dangerous. I can't ask you to get involved." She turned back, her usually gentle features set in stubborn lines. "You're not asking, I'm offering. Besides," she added with a small smile, "someone needs to make sure you don't try handling everything alone again." The subtle criticism in her words made James wince, remembering all the times she'd tried to draw him out of his self-imposed isolation. Her quiet persistence in bringing him coffee, leaving notes about community events, gently suggesting he attend local veterinary conferences, all met with polite deflection. Cooper's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He stepped aside to take the call while Elena helped Sarah gather supplies. James focused on making Hope comfortable, administering pain medication and starting fluids. The shepherd's breathing had steadied, but her eyes followed every movement. In the room, with intelligent awareness. That was the FBI field office in Helena, Cooper announced, rejoining them. "They're sending a team, but it won't be here until morning. Until then, we need to keep this quiet. If word gets out about what we've found, it could compromise months of ongoing investigations." James nodded, understanding the implications. Whatever operation they'd stumbled upon, it was bigger than Cedar Grove. Hope wasn't just a victim. She was evidence in what was clearly a sophisticated criminal enterprise. The thought made his stomach turn. "I'll stay tonight," Elena offered, settling into a chair near the isolation ward entrance. "Standard protective custody protocol. Sarah, can you handle things here tomorrow morning if we need the doc to meet with the feds?" Sarah nodded, already organizing supplies with practiced efficiency. "Of course, I'll reschedule any non-emergency appointments. We can say there's been a maintenance issue with the clinic's water system." James watched them work. These people he'd kept at arm's length for so long, now rallying around him and Hope without hesitation. The walls he'd built between himself and the community suddenly felt less like protection and more like prison bars of his own making. As the night settled around them, Hope finally drifted into a medicated sleep, her breathing deep and even. James found himself studying the scar on his hand again, thinking about the day that had driven him into hiding. He'd made a mistake then, hesitated when he should have acted. The cost had been too high. A promising police dog lost, a handler's trust shattered, his confidence destroyed. But looking at Hope, at the evidence of calculated cruelty hidden beneath her fur, he knew he couldn't afford to hesitate again. Whatever came next would require all of his skill, all of his courage, and perhaps most challenging of all, his willingness to trust others. Sarah appeared at his side, holding out a cup of coffee. "You should try to rest," she said quietly. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." He accepted the coffee, noting how she'd made it exactly as he liked. Black, no sugar. Just one of the many small ways she'd paid attention over the years, even when he'd tried so hard to remain invisible. "Sarah," he started, then paused, unsure how to express his gratitude for her unwavering support. "I'm sorry I've been difficult, distant, stubbornly independent." She smiled to soften the words. "It's okay, Dr. Mitchell. Everyone has their reasons for keeping walls up. But sometimes," she glanced meaningfully at Hope, "the right case comes along to show us why those walls need to come down." The night stretched ahead, full of uncertainty and potential danger. But as James settled in to monitor Hope's condition, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: the quiet strength of not being alone. Whatever this case would reveal, whatever challenges lay ahead, he had people willing to stand beside him. Now, he just had to learn to let them. Dawn broke over Cedar Grove with a golden haze, the morning light filtering through the clinic's windows as James reviewed Hope's latest ultrasound images with Agent Diana Chen from the FBI's Special Operations Unit. The agent's presence filled the small examination room with an intensity that made the space feel even more cramped than usual. "The surgical precision is remarkable," Agent Chen murmured, her finger tracing the outline of one of the foreign objects visible in the scan. "Whoever did this has extensive veterinary training. They knew exactly how to place these packages without harming the puppies or triggering a rejection response." James nodded grimly, pointing to specific areas on the screen. "The sutures are nearly invisible, and they used a type of surgical mesh I've only seen in specialized veterinary hospitals. This isn't back alley work, it's professional." Hope lay on her bed in the corner, watching them with alert eyes as she nursed the puppies that had arrived unexpectedly in the early hours of the morning. The delivery had been complicated but successful, bringing 5 healthy puppies into the world. Each one had required careful examination to ensure they weren't affected by their mother's ordeal. 7 similar cases in the past month. Agent Chen continued, spreading photographs across the examination table. All German shepherds, all pregnant, all surgically altered to carry contraband. But this is the first time we found one before they could retrieve their cargo. The implications made James's stomach turn. He thought of how many other dogs might have suffered the same fate. How many might not have survived the crude surgical procedures. His hands clenched involuntarily, and Hope whined softly from her corner, as if sensing his distress. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her face tight with concern. "Dr. Mitchell, there's someone here asking about a missing German shepherd. Says his name is Marcus Thorne." Agent Chen's head snapped up, her hand moving instinctively toward her concealed weapon. Description: tall, well-dressed, driving a black SUV with Montana plates. "He's very insistent about checking our recent admissions." James moved to the window, carefully peering through the blinds. The man pacing in the waiting room carried himself with an air of authority that seemed at odds with his story of a lost pet. His expensive suit and manicured appearance spoke of wealth and influence. "He matches the description from the Billings case," Agent Chen said quietly, pulling up a file on her tablet. "Same approach. Presents himself as a concerned owner looking for a lost dog. By the time local authorities connect the dots, he's gone, along with any evidence. Hope's low growl drew their attention. The shepherd had positioned herself between her puppies and the door, her ears flat against her head. The reaction told James everything he needed to know about Marcus Thorne. "Sarah," he said carefully, "tell him we haven't seen any German shepherds recently. Suggest he try the shelter in Missoula. They handle most of the strays in this area." As Sarah left to deliver the message, Agent Chen moved closer to Hope, studying the dog's reaction. She recognizes his voice, or his scent. "We could bring him in now, question him, and risk spooking the entire operation?" James shook his head. "He's not working alone. These surgeries, the coordination required to move the dogs across state lines, this is organized." Through the window, they watched as Thorne returned to his SUV, his movements deliberate and controlled. Instead of leaving, he pulled into a parking spot across the street, engine idling. "He's not giving up," Agent Chen observed. "He knows she's here somehow." James thought about the sophisticated nature of the surgeries, the professional medical knowledge required. A horrible suspicion began forming in his mind. "The mesh they used," he said slowly. "It's a new type, still in clinical trials. Only a few veterinary hospitals have access to it." Agent Chen's eyes narrowed. "Including Seattle Metropolitan?" The name sent a chill down James's spine. His old hospital, where he'd worked before the incident that drove him away. Where he'd first seen this same surgical mesh being tested in a research program. "Check the shipping records," he urged. "See who's been ordering it, especially in large quantities." He paused, another piece clicking into place. "And look into Dr. Victor Reynolds. He was heading the surgical research department when I left." The name clearly meant something to Agent Chen. She pulled out her phone, stepping away to make a call while James checked on Hope and her puppies. The shepherd had relaxed slightly, but remained watchful, her protective instincts in full force. Sarah returned, locking the clinic's front door. "He's still out there," she reported. "Should we call Detective Cooper?" Before James could respond, Hope suddenly stiffened, her attention fixed on the clinic's back entrance. A moment later, they heard it. The soft scrape of metal against metal, barely audible over the building's heating system. Agent Chen drew her weapon, motioning for James and Sarah to stay back. The sound came again, followed by a quiet click. Someone was trying to break in through the rear delivery entrance. "Get Hope and the puppies into the isolation ward," Agent Chen whispered. "Lock yourselves in and call for backup." But James hesitated, memories of his last moment of indecision flooding back. The cost of his failure in Seattle had been too high. He couldn't fail again, not with so much at stake. "There's another way," he said quickly. "The old service tunnel. This building used to be connected to the pharmacy next door. We still have access to the maintenance passage. We can get Hope out without them seeing us." Agent Chen considered for a split second before nodding. "Do it. I'll deal with our uninvited and guests. Sarah, call Cooper. Tell him we need a secure transport and backup at the tunnel exit behind Henderson's pharmacy." James led Hope and her puppies through the clinic's storage room, his heart pounding as he heard voices at the back door. The shepherd moved with remarkable focus, carrying one puppy while helping guide the others. Sarah gathered the remaining pups, wrapping them in warm blankets. The service tunnel entrance was hidden behind old supply shelves, its existence known only to longtime residents of Cedar Grove. As James pulled the shelves aside, revealing the heavy metal door, He could hear footsteps in the clinic above. The tunnel was narrow and dark, lit only by emergency lights that cast long shadows on the concrete walls. Hope pressed close to his leg as they moved forward, her trust in him absolute. Despite her obvious anxiety, Sarah followed with the remaining puppies, her steps sure and quiet. They were halfway through when they heard gunshots echo from the clinic, the sound muffled by layers of concrete and earth. Hope whined softly but kept moving, her focus on protecting her puppies, overriding her instinct to turn back. "Almost there," James whispered, seeing light ahead where the tunnel emerged behind the pharmacy. But as they approached the exit, a shadow fell across the opening. Someone was waiting. James froze, his mind racing. The tunnel had only 2 exits. Going back meant facing whoever had broken into the clinic, but moving forward might be walking into a trap. In the dim light, he saw Sarah clutch the puppies closer, her eyes wide with fear. Hope made the decision for them. The shepherd moved forward deliberately, placing herself between the humans and the exit. Her posture was alert, but not aggressive, her tail giving a single careful wag. A familiar voice called softly from outside. "Dr. Mitchell, it's Elena. Cooper's got the area secured. You're safe." The relief that flooded through James nearly made his knees buckle. They emerged into the morning sunlight to find police vehicles strategically positioned around the pharmacies. Backlot. Elena quickly ushered them toward an unmarked van, while tactical units moved toward the clinic. "Agent Chen?" Sarah asked, carefully transferring the puppies to the van's prepared kennel area. "She's fine," Elena assured them. "2 suspects in custody, but we need to move you all to a secure location. Thorne's vehicle is gone. He must have realized what was happening and slipped away." As they drove through Cedar Grove's quiet streets, James watched Hope settle with her puppies in the van's kennel area. The shepherd's eyes met his, filled with a trust he wasn't sure he deserved. He had run from his past once before, hidden from his failures in this small town. But watching Hope protect her puppies, seeing her courage in the face of danger, he knew running was no longer an option. Whatever came next, whatever dangers lay ahead, he had to see this through. He owed it to Hope, to the other dogs who had suffered, and perhaps most importantly, to himself. The time for hiding was over. The safe house turned out to be an old ranger station nestled in the mountains outside Cedar Grove. James stood at the window, watching as FBI technicians set up surveillance equipment around the perimeter. Hope lay nearby, nursing her puppies in a makeshift den created from blankets and cushions, her watchful gaze never leaving the door. Agent Chen spread case files across the station's worn kitchen table, creating a timeline of similar incidents across 3 states. "The surgical mesh was our breakthrough," she explained, highlighting shipping manifests. "Multiple orders to different clinics, all eventually traced back to shell companies connected to one name, Victor Reynolds." The familiar name made James's chest tighten. He remembered Victor's ambitious research programs at Seattle Metropolitan, his drive for innovation that sometimes seemed to overshadow patient care. But this level of cruelty seemed impossible even for Victor. "There's more," Elena added, joining them with fresh coffee. "Those 2 men we caught at the clinic, both former veterinary technicians. One worked at Seattle Metropolitan until 3 years ago." James froze, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. 3 years ago, that's when you left after losing the police dog during surgery," Agent Chen finished. "We know about that case, Dr. Mitchell. In fact, it might be more relevant than you'd realize." Sarah, who had been quietly organizing medical supplies, looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Agent Chen pulled out a photograph, sliding it across the table. It showed a German Shepherd in police tactical gear, the same dog James had lost on his operating table 3 years ago. This was K9 Officer Max. His handler reported something unusual during his last few training sessions before he died. Max was showing signs of discomfort, behavioral changes. The autopsy was inconclusive, but now, "You think he'd been surgically altered too?" James whispered, the pieces falling into place with horrifying clarity. "That's why he crashed during routine surgery. The mesh must have caused complications we couldn't see." The revelation hit him like a physical blow. For 3 years, he'd carried the guilt of Max's death, believing his mistake had cost the dog his life. But if Victor had been using police dogs for his operation even then, Hope whined softly, abandoning her puppies for a moment to press against James's leg. Her warm presence anchored him as memories threatened to overwhelm him. The handler, he managed finally. "Officer Kate Sullivan, have you contacted her?" "That's our next step," Agent Chen replied. "She left the K9 unit after Max's death, transferred to a small department in Idaho. We need her testimony to build our case." The sound of vehicles approaching sent Hope into high alert. Everyone tensed until Eleanor confirmed it was Detective Cooper arriving with more supplies and information from town. "Thorne's gone underground," Cooper reported, setting down boxes of equipment. "But we found something interesting in his SUV's GPS history, multiple trips to a private airfield just outside Bozeman." Agent Chen's expression sharpened. "Perfect for moving cargo across state lines without attracting attention. We need eyes on that airfield." "Already done," Cooper assured her. "FBI surveillance team is in place. If Thorne shows up, we'll know." James watched as Hope returned to her puppies, each one healthy despite the ordeal their mother had endured. The smallest one, a female with a white patch on her chest, raised her head and yawned, drawing a gentle nuzzle from Hope. "They'll need names," Sarah said softly, joining him in watching the family. "We can't keep calling them Puppy 1 through 5. The suggestion of normalcy in the midst of such tension almost made James smile. "The little one with the white patch," he said, "reminds me of Max. Same determined look." "Then that's her name," Sarah decided. "Max, a tribute to where this all started." The sound of Eleanor's phone ringing cut through the quiet moment. Her expression turned grave as she listened. "They found another one," she reported after hanging up. "German Shepherd, pregnant, wandering near the Bozeman airfield. But this time, something went wrong with the surgery." James's medical instincts kicked in immediately. "How far is the airfield?" 2 hours, Cooper answered. "But, Dr. Mitchell, it's not safe for you to—" "That dog needs immediate medical attention," James interrupted. "You have a fully equipped tactical team for security. I'm the closest qualified veterinary surgeon, and if the complications are what I suspect from the mesh, there's no time to—" "Wait." Agent Chen studied him for a long moment before nodding. "We'll take a coordinated approach, full tactical team, medical support. Sarah stays here with Hope and the puppies under protection." The next hour was a flurry of preparation. James gathered surgical supplies, while Agent Chen coordinated with her team. Hope watched the activity with obvious concern, moving restlessly between her puppies and the humans. "I'll be back," James promised her, kneeling to stroke her fur. "Sarah will keep you and the puppies safe." The shepherd pressed her nose against his hand, her brown eyes full of understanding. For a moment, James was struck by how far they'd both come from that first night when she'd limped into his clinic. The drive to Bozeman was tense, with armed FBI vehicles escorting them. James used the time to review everything he knew about the surgical mesh and its potential complications. If Victor had rushed this surgery or used an inexperienced assistant, "You're not responsible for Max's death," Agent Chen said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Victor Reynolds used your surgery as cover for his own mistakes. He let you believe it was your fault because it was convenient." James gripped his medical bag tighter, processing her words. Why didn't the investigation reveal any of this? Reynolds buried it well. He had influence, connections. But he made a mistake with hope, getting sloppy, taking bigger risks. That's usually when operations like this start to unravel. They arrived at the airfield to find local authorities securing the perimeter. The injured shepherd had been moved to a nearby maintenance building where a makeshift medical area had been prepared. The dog's condition made James's heart sink. Female, heavily pregnant like Hope, but with clear signs of surgical complications. The mesh was failing, causing infection and distress. "I need to operate immediately," he announced, already unpacking his supplies. "The puppies are in distress, and the infection is spreading." As the team scrambled to assist, James caught a glimpse of movement through the building's dusty window. A black SUV was parked in the shadows of a distant hangar, barely visible in the growing dusk. "Chen," he said quietly, nodding toward the window, "we've got company." The agent's hand moved to her weapon as she peered out. "Thorne, he's watching, probably waiting to clean up his mess. Cooper, get your team in position. But quietly, we don't want to spook him before the surgeon arrives." "The surgeon?" James asked, preparing his instruments. "Reynolds," Chen explained grimly. "According to our intelligence, he personally handles any complications in the operation. If that dog is as badly injured as you say, he'll come. He can't risk leaving evidence." James focused on his patient, pushing aside thoughts of confronting his former colleague. The shepherd's life hung by a thread. Her puppies in danger. This time he wouldn't hesitate. This time he would save them. The maintenance building's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows as James worked to save the injured shepherd and her unborn puppies. Every minute felt like an hour as he carefully navigated the complicated surgery, hyper-aware of the black SUV lurking in the distance and the FBI agents positioned strategically around the building. "BP's dropping. The emergency," veterinary technician announced, her voice tight with concern. The shepherd's vital signs wavered dangerously as James worked to repair the damage caused by the failed surgical mesh. "Come on, girl," he muttered, his hands steady despite the pressure. "Stay with me." The dog's gentle brown eyes, so like Hope's, remained fixed on him with that same trusting expression that still amazed him. Agent Chen appeared at his shoulder, speaking in low tones. Movement at the hangar. A second vehicle just arrived. Silver Mercedes. Registration matches Reynolds. James's hands stilled for just a moment as memories flooded back. Victor Reynolds, in his pristine white coat, teaching surgical techniques to eager residents. His voice always calm and measured, even in crisis. The man who'd mentored him, who'd seemed to represent everything James had aspired to be. "He's approaching with two others," Chen continued. "Cooper's team is in position. As soon as they enter the building—" "No," James interrupted, his mind racing. "If we take them now, we lose the chance to uncover the whole operation. The other dogs, the buyers, everyone involved." He glanced at his patient's vital signs, making rapid calculations. "Let them think they're in control. Let them come to us." Chen studied him for a long moment before nodding. "What do you need?" "Make it look like we're losing her. clear everyone. Out except essential medical personnel. Reynolds won't be able to resist checking my work. His ego won't let him. The agent quickly coordinated with her team, orchestrating a gradual withdrawal that would look natural to watching eyes. James focused on his patient, every movement deliberate and visible through the building's windows. The main door creaked open, letting in a gust of cold mountain air. James didn't look up from his work, but he recognized the measured footsteps. Approaching the surgical area, Dr. Mitchell, Victor Reynolds' smooth voice, carried the same authoritative tone James remembered. What an unexpected reunion. James kept his attention on his patient, noting how her vital signs remained precarious but stable. Not that unexpected, Victor. You knew I was in Cedar Grove. A tragic waste of your talents, Reynolds replied, moving closer to inspect the surgery. All that potential, hiding in a small-town clinic because of one unfortunate incident. The casual mention of Max's death made James's jaw clench, but he maintained his composure. An incident you engineered. Reynolds sighed, the sound almost paternal in its disappointment. You were always too idealistic, James. Too concerned with individual cases instead of seeing the bigger picture. Do you know how much each successful delivery is worth? The technological advances we've achieved? Advances built on cruelty, James countered, carefully removing another section of compromised mesh. How many dogs died in your experiments? Victor, how many didn't survive the surgeries? Acceptable losses in pursuit of progress. Reynolds moved to the other side of the surgical table, his experienced eye assessing James's technique. Your skills haven't deteriorated, at least, but this one's too far gone. The infection's spreading. James knew Victor was right. If this had been a normal case, the shepherd would have little chance. But he'd learned something from Hope, something about the extraordinary resilience hidden beneath ordinary appearances. She's a fighter, he said quietly, his hands never stopping their careful work. Like Max was. The name hung in the air between them. Through the corner of his eye, James saw Reynolds' perfect composure slip for just a moment. Ah, yes, Officer Sullivan's dog. Another unfortunate loss. Victor's voice carried a note of warning. You should be careful about dwelling on the past, James. Some questions are better left unasked. Like why a routine surgery went wrong. James kept his tone conversational as he worked, knowing Agent Chen and her team were listening through concealed microphones. Why the autopsy results disappeared. Why a decorated police dog suddenly developed complications no one could explain. Reynolds stepped closer, his voice dropping. You had such promise. I offered you a position in my research program, a chance to be part of something revolutionary. Instead, you let one setback destroy your career. It wasn't a setback, James said, finally looking up to meet his former mentor's gaze. It was murder. You used Max to test your smuggling technique, and when something went wrong, you let me take the fall. The building's door opened again as Thorne entered with two other men, their expensive suits incongruous in the makeshift surgical space. James recognized one of them from his days in Seattle, Dr. Andrew Keller, a pharmaceutical research director. This is taking too long, Thorne announced, his cold eyes fixed on the shepherd. We need to clean this up and move out, now. Reynolds waved a dismissive hand. Patience, Marcus. Dr. Mitchell is about to step aside and let me handle this complication. Aren't you, James? The threat in his voice was clear, but James didn't move. Like you handled Max? Tell me, Victor, was he the first or just the first one that went wrong? You don't want to do this, Reynolds warned softly. Think about your quiet life in Cedar Grove, about that other shepherd you've been protecting. Hope, isn't it? Such a loyal dog. It would be a shame if something happened to her and those puppies. James's hands stilled as rage coursed through him. The casual threat against Hope, delivered in that same smooth, professional tone, crystallized everything he'd been feeling since that first ultrasound revealed the truth. "You're right," he said quietly, straightening up from the surgical table. "I don't want to do this, but someone has to stop you." Reynolds smiled, reaching for a syringe from the medical tray. "Always the idealist, but you're forgetting something, James. In here, right now. I'm the one with the power. When this dog dies during surgery, it will be your second tragic mistake. Who would believe I would?" The new voice came from the doorway, strong and clear. Officer Kate Sullivan stepped into the light, her K9 unit badge gleaming. "I've been waiting 3 years to hear this confession." The color drained from Reynolds' face as FBI agents emerged from their hiding places, weapons drawn. Chen quickly took control of the scene, coordinating the arrests while James refocused on his patient. "Kate," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry about Max. I should have figured it out sooner." The K9 officer moved to the surgical table, her hand gently stroking the shepherd's fur. "Max died because of them, not you. But his death helped expose this operation, and now?" She gestured to the dog on the table. "Now you can save this one." The next hour passed in a blur of intense concentration as James completed the surgery. The shepherd pulled through, her vital signs stabilizing as the last suture was placed. Her puppies, protected by some miracle of nature, remained stable throughout the ordeal. Outside, the FBI led Reynolds and his associates to waiting vehicles. James watched through the window as his former mentor was handcuffed, his perfect composure finally shattered. "We found documentation in Reynolds' car," Chen reported, returning to check on the patient. Details of the entire operation, every dog, every shipment, every buyer. He kept meticulous records. "Pride," Kate commented grimly. He was too proud of his work to destroy the evidence. James exhaustedly peeled off his surgical gloves, the events of the day catching up with him. "What happens now?" "Now," Chen said firmly, "we get this brave girl somewhere safe to recover. Then we follow every lead, find every dog they used, and make sure this never happens again." The shepherd on the table wagged her tail weakly, already showing signs of improvement. Looking at her, James felt the weight of the past 3 years finally begin to lift. "I know just the place," he said, thinking of Hope and her puppies waiting at the ranger station. "It's time to turn that small-town clinic into something bigger, something that can help all the dogs they hurt." Kate smiled, understanding in her eyes. Max would have liked that. As they prepared to transport their patient, James received a text from Sarah. Hope's puppies had opened their eyes, and the little one named Max was already trying to explore beyond the blanket nest. Some wounds, James realized, never fully healed. But they could become the foundation for something stronger, something that turned past pain into future purpose. The quiet life he'd hidden in was over, but in its place, a new chapter was beginning. The journey back to Cedar Grove felt surreal in the pre-dawn light. James rode in the medical transport with the rescued shepherd, whom Kate had named Luna, monitoring her vital signs while processing everything that had happened at the airfield. In the distance, a line of FBI vehicles escorted Reynolds and his associates toward federal custody. Temperatures stabilizing, James reported to the veterinary technician assisting him. Luna's tail gave a gentle wag at the sound of his voice, her resilience remarkable given everything she'd endured. Like Hope, she possessed a strength that went far beyond physical recovery. Agent Chen had remained behind to coordinate the investigation, but her last words to James echoed in his mind. Reynolds' records are extensive. We're looking at operations in 12 states, possibly international connections. This is just the beginning. The ranger station came into view as their convoy wound through the mountain roads. James could see Sarah waiting at the entrance, her face breaking into a relieved smile as she recognized the vehicles. Hope appeared beside her, ears forward with interest as the medical transport parked. "Everything's secure here," Sarah reported as James supervised Luna's careful transfer into the station. "The puppies are thriving, especially little Max. She's already trying to escape the nest box." Luna perked up at the sound of puppies, her maternal instincts strong despite her ordeal. James had her settled in a comfortable recovery area near Hope's den, close enough for the two mothers to see each other, but with enough space to feel secure. Kate Sullivan watched the interactions between the dogs with professional interest. "They understand each other," she observed. Survivors recognizing survivors. The morning brought a flurry of activity as FBI evidence teams processed the documentation found in Reynolds' possession. Elena arrived with Detective Cooper, bringing news from town and fresh supplies. "The local news is already picking up the story," Cooper announced, spreading out the morning paper. The headline read, "Veterinary smuggling ring uncovered in Montana. Local doctor key to investigation." James winced at the attention, but Sarah quickly intervened. "This is good," she insisted. "People need to know what happened. It might help identify other victims, other dogs that need help." She was right, of course. Already the FBI had begun, receiving calls from veterinary clinics across the country, reporting suspicious cases that matched the pattern. Each call represented another dog that might need rescue, another chance to right the wrongs Reynolds had committed. "We've been discussing the future of your clinic," Eleanor said, joining them at the station's worn kitchen table. "The FBI wants to establish a specialized veterinary unit focused on recovering and rehabilitating dogs from situations like this. They're interested in making Cedar Grove the headquarters." The proposal caught James off guard. "My clinic's hardly equipped for something that scale. That's why they're offering funding," Kate added. "Full renovation, expanded facilities, special training programs. They want someone who understands both the medical and investigative aspects, someone the dogs trust." As if to emphasize the point, Hope padded over to rest her head on James's knee, her eyes full of that unfailing trust that still humbled him. Luna watched from her bed, her own gaze equally confident in his presence. "Think about it," Sarah urged softly. "Remember what you told me about your dreams for the clinic, about wanting to make a real difference? This is your chance." James looked around the room at these people who had become more than colleagues. They were partners in something larger than themselves. Elena's steady determination, Cooper's unwavering support, Kate's hard-won wisdom, and Sarah's gentle persistence had all played crucial roles in bringing Reynolds' operation down. "We'd need a proper surgical suite," he found himself saying. "Recovery wards, rehabilitation facilities, security systems." Sarah's face lit up as she pulled out a notebook, already making lists. The old warehouse behind the clinic could be converted for training programs. And that vacant lot next door, perfect for an exercise yard. Canine units could help with rehabilitation, Kate suggested. Many of these dogs have the right temperament for service work once they've healed. Luna here, for instance. The shepherd's ears perked up at her name, and her tail wagged as Kate approached to evaluate her potential. Despite her recent surgery, Luna showed immediate interest in the training toys Kate offered. She's got the drive, Kate confirmed. With proper rehabilitation, she could have a future in detection work. These dogs deserve a second chance to be heroes. The sound of vehicles approaching drew everyone's attention. Agent Chen had returned, accompanied by a team of veterinary forensics experts. The evidence they'd uncovered painted an even darker picture of Reynolds' operation. "We found records dating back 5 years," Chen reported grimly. "Max wasn't just the first casualty, he was the prototype." Reynolds used his position at Seattle Metropolitan to identify potential police dogs for his experiments. When Max's surgery went wrong, he let me take the blame. James finished quietly. "Used my guilt to make sure I wouldn't look too closely at what really happened." "But he didn't count on Hope finding you," Sarah pointed out, "or on you being brave enough to face your past when it mattered most." Hope's puppies had begun their morning chorus of squeaks and whimpers, drawing smiles despite the serious conversation. The little one named Max was indeed the most adventurous, already attempting to climb the walls of their enclosure. "She's got her namesake's spirit," Kate observed, watching the puppy's determined efforts. Max never knew when to quit either. The mention of his former patient no longer brought just pain. Now, it carried purpose, a legacy that would live on in the work they were planning. In every dog, they would help recover and rebuild. Reynolds thought he could use these dogs as tools, James said, his decision crystallizing. "Let's show the world what they really are. Survivors, heroes, teachers. Each one with a story that deserves to be told." The next few hours were filled with planning sessions as they mapped out the future of what would become the Hope's Haven Veterinary Recovery Center. The FBI's resources would provide the foundation, but it was the spirit of Cedar Grove's community that would give it heart. "We'll need volunteers," Sarah mused, her list growing longer. "People to help with rehabilitation, socialization, even just spending time with the dogs while they heal." "The schools could get involved," Elena suggested. "Educational programs about animal welfare, veterinary science, and professional training for law enforcement," Kate added. "Teaching officers what to look for, how to identify dogs at risk." James watched as Hope made her rounds between Luna and the puppies, checking on everyone with gentle concern. She had transformed from a desperate, injured survivor into a confident mother and natural therapy dog, helping Luna remain calm during treatment. "Hope should be our first success story," he decided. "Once she's fully recovered, she can help us rehabilitate other dogs. She already knows how to connect with them, how to show them they're safe." The puppy named Max chose that moment to finally escape her enclosure, tumbling out with a triumphant yip. Hope quickly retrieved her adventurous daughter, but not before the puppy had made her way to Luna's bed, where she received a gentle nose bump of approval from the recovering shepherd. "I guess that settles it," Sarah laughed. "The next generation's already volunteering." As the day progressed, more pieces fell into place. The FBI's forensics team established a temporary headquarters in town, coordinating with clinics across the country to identify and recover other dogs from Reynolds's operation. Each new discovery strengthened their resolve to create something meaningful from this tragedy. "We'll need a proper name for the puppy program," Kate suggested, watching Max attempt another escape. "Something that honors both her namesake and what we're building here." "The Max Legacy Project," James offered quietly. "For every dog that deserves a second chance to be a hero." The name felt right, acknowledging both the past and the future they were creating. In Max's memory, and through Hope's courage, they would build something that transformed tragedy into triumph, one rescued dog at a time. The news about Reynolds' operation spread through Cedar Grove like wildfire, transforming the quiet mountain town into the center of a national story. James watched from his clinic's window as another news van parked across the street, its satellite dish gleaming in the morning sun. "Channel 7 wants an interview," Sarah announced, sorting through the growing pile of messages on her desk. "And the American Veterinary Association called again about your keynote speech at their conference." The attention still made James uncomfortable, but he understood its necessity. Each interview, each speaking engagement meant another chance to raise awareness, to help other clinics identify potential victims of similar operations. Hope lay near, his feet, her peaceful presence, a steady reminder of why they were doing this. Her puppies had graduated from their nest box to a larger playpen, where little Max continued to lead adventures in escape artistry. Luna's recovery had progressed remarkably well under their care. The shepherd now spent her mornings in gentle rehabilitation sessions with Kate, who had taken temporary leave from her K9 unit to help establish the training programs at Hope's. "Haven, she's a natural," Kate reported, returning from their latest session. "Her drive to work, even after everything she's been through, is incredible. We've already had 3 police departments express interest in her once she's fully recovered. The clinic itself was undergoing a dramatic transformation. FBI funding had allowed them to begin renovations, expanding into the neighboring properties, to create a state-of-the-art facility. The old warehouse behind the clinic was being converted into a training center, complete with specialized equipment for rehabilitation and K9 preparation. The community support has been overwhelming," Elena commented, bringing in yet another box of donations. Local businesses had rallied around Hope's Haven, providing everything from building materials to blankets and pet supplies. The town's children had taken a particular interest in the project, selling handmade dog toys to raise funds and volunteering. To socialize the recovering animals, their innocent enthusiasm brought light to even the darkest cases. "Mrs. Henderson's 4th grade class sent these," Sarah said, holding up a bundle of carefully drawn cards. Each one featured a different dog they'd helped, with Hope and Luna as frequent starring characters. James picked up one drawing that showed the clinic transformed into a castle-like sanctuary, complete with a flag bearing Hope's likeness. The child's imagination had captured exactly what they were trying to build, a fortress of healing for dogs who had never known safety. The investigation into Reynolds' operation continued to expand. Agent Chen's team had uncovered connections to trafficking rings in Europe and Asia, each discovery bringing more survivors to their door. 2 more shepherds arriving tomorrow, Chen reported during their morning briefing, retrieved from a raid in Oregon. Similar surgical alterations, but earlier in the process. The local vet recognized the signs from your training video. The educational materials they'd developed, based on Hope and Luna's cases, had become crucial. tools for veterinary professionals across the country. James's detailed documentation of the surgical mesh complications had already helped save several dogs. Vancouver Police Department called, Kate added, reviewing her notes. They're interested in implementing our screening protocols for their K9 program. They want to send a team to observe our training methods. Sarah had created a sophisticated tracking system for their cases, mapping each rescue and recovery across an interactive display in the clinic's new conference room. The growing network of connected points told a story of both tragedy and triumph. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a cluster of recent recoveries. 5 successful rehabilitations in the past month alone, 3 already adopted by law enforcement agencies, 2 in training as therapy dogs. The sound of excited barking drew their attention to the clinic's back door, where Cooper was arriving with their latest rescue, a young shepherd mix discovered during a traffic stop in Idaho. The dog's surgery scars were still fresh, but her tail wagged hopefully as she caught sight of Hope. "Perfect timing," James said, watching as Hope immediately approached the newcomer with her characteristic gentle authority. The older shepherd had developed an uncanny ability to calm traumatized dogs, showing them by example that healing was possible. Luna joined them, her own recovery now complete enough to assist with new arrivals. The 2 adult shepherds worked in tandem, creating a safe space for the nervous rescue to begin her journey to recovery. "It's amazing," Eleanor observed, "how they seem to understand exactly what each new dog needs, like they remember their own healing process." The puppy named Max chose that moment to make her presence known, squeezing through a gap in her playpen to investigate the newcomer. Her littermates watched with interest, but none quite matched her bold curiosity. "She's going to be special," Kate predicted, scooping up the adventurous puppy. "She's got all of Hope's intuition with twice the energy, perfect for search and rescue work." The clinic's transformation had brought changes to James as well. The guilt he'd carried since Seattle no longer weighed him down. Instead, it had become the foundation for something meaningful. A mission to ensure no other dogs suffered as Max had. "Dr. Mitchell?" A small voice caught his attention. 10-year-old Tommy Chen, Sarah's nephew, stood in the doorway clutching a dog-eared notebook. "Can I interview you for my school project? We're supposed to write about local heroes," James started to demur, but Sarah cut him off. "He's all yours, Tommy. Why don't you start by meeting our newest arrival?" The boy's face lit up as he was introduced to the rescue shepherd, who responded to his gentle approach with cautious interest. Hope and Luna supervised the interaction, their presence ensuring both human and dog felt secure. "How did you know?" Tommy asked, carefully taking notes. "When Hope first came to the clinic, how did you know something was wrong?" James considered the question, remembering that rainy night that had changed everything. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "our biggest challenges lead us to our most important work. Hope taught me that every ending can become a new beginning." Mute wisdom of his own words struck him as he watched Tommy interact with the dogs. His fear of making another mistake had nearly prevented him from helping Hope that night. Instead, her trust had given him the courage to face his past and create something extraordinary. "We're getting reports of similar operations in other countries," Agent Chen mentioned, joining them with fresh intelligence. "Veterinary organizations worldwide are requesting our protocols, our training materials." What had started as one small-town vet's redemption story was becoming a global movement to protect and rehabilitate animals from exploitation. Hope's Haven was setting standards for veterinary forensics and recovery programs that would reach far beyond Cedar Grove. The contractors finished the new surgery wing, Sarah reported, showing him the latest renovations. And the rehabilitation pool installation starts next week. We're almost ready to begin full-scale operations. The facility they were creating would combine cutting-edge medical care with comprehensive rehabilitation programs, all founded on the principles of patience, understanding, and respect for each animal's individual journey to recovery. "I think Max would be proud," Kate said quietly, watching as Hope guided the new rescue through her first tentative steps in the training area. This is exactly the kind of legacy he deserved. Tommy's simple question had captured the heart of their mission. Every dog that came through their doors carried a story, a possibility for transformation. Hope's Haven wasn't just about healing physical wounds. It was about restoring trust, rebuilding confidence, and recognizing the hero within each survivor. The morning sun painted Cedar Grove's mountains in shades of gold as James walked through Hope's Haven's newly completed training facility. 6 months had passed since the confrontation with Reynolds, and the transformation of his modest clinic into a state-of-the-art rehabilitation center was nearly complete. Hope trotted beside him, her puppies now grown into gangly adolescents that bounded through the training courses under Kate's watchful eye. Little Max, no longer so little, showed particular promise in the agility trials, her energy and intelligence drawing attention from search and rescue programs across the country. The latest test results came back from the FBI lab, Agent Chen announced, joining them in the observation area. They've identified 3 new variations of the surgical mesh. Reynolds was constantly modifying his technique. The discovery sent a chill through James as he watched Luna guide a recently rescued shepherd through basic confidence exercises. Each new detail they uncovered about Reynolds' operation revealed greater depths of calculation and cruelty. "But we're ahead of him now," Sarah added, her typical optimism cutting through the darkness of the revelation. "Our detection protocols are being implemented in clinics worldwide. The network is growing stronger every day." "She's going to be special," Kate predicted, scooping up the adventurous puppy. "She's got all of Hope's intuition with twice the energy. Perfect for search and rescue work." The clinic's transformation had brought changes to James as well. The guilt he'd carried since Seattle no longer weighed him down. Instead, it had become the foundation for something meaningful, a mission to ensure no other dogs suffered as Max had. "Dr. Mitchell," a small voice caught his attention. 10-year-old Tommy Chen, Sarah's nephew, stood in the doorway clutching a dog-eared notebook. "Can I interview you for my school project? We're supposed to write about local heroes," James started. To demur, but Sarah cut him off. "He's all yours, Tommy. Why don't you start by meeting our newest arrival?" The boy's face lit up as he was introduced to the rescue shepherd, who responded to his gentle approach with cautious interest. Hope and Luna supervised the interaction, their presence ensuring both human and dog felt secure. "How did you know?" Tommy asked, carefully taking notes. "When Hope first came to the clinic, how did you know something was wrong?" James considered the question, remembering that rainy night that had changed everything. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "our biggest challenges lead us to our most important work." Hope taught me that every ending can become a new beginning. The wisdom of his own words struck him as he watched Tommy interact with the dogs. His fear of making another mistake had nearly prevented him from helping Hope that night. Instead, her trust had given him the courage to face his past and create something extraordinary. We're getting reports of similar operations in other countries. Agent Chen mentioned, joining them with fresh intelligence. Veterinary organizations worldwide are requesting our protocols, our training materials. What had started as one small-town vet's redemption story was becoming a global movement to protect and rehabilitate animals from exploitation. Hope's Haven was setting standards for veterinary forensics and recovery programs that would reach far beyond Cedar Grove. The contractors finished the new surgery wing, Sarah reported, showing him the latest renovations, and the rehabilitation pool installation starts next week. We're almost ready to begin full-scale operations. The facility they were creating would combine cutting-edge medical care with comprehensive rehabilitation programs, all founded on the principles of patience, understanding, and respect for each animal's individual journey to recovery. I think Max would be proud, Kate said quietly, watching as Hope guided the new rescue through her first tentative steps in the training area. This is exactly the kind of legacy he deserved. Tommy's simple question had captured the heart of their mission. Every dog that came through their doors carried a story, a possibility for transformation. Hope's Haven wasn't just about healing physical wounds. It was about restoring trust, rebuilding confidence, and recognizing the hero within each survivor. The morning sun painted Cedar Grove's mountains in shades of gold as James walked through Hope's Haven's newly completed training facility. 6 months had passed since the confrontation with Reynolds, and the transformation of his modest clinic into a state-of-the-art rehabilitation center was nearly complete. Hope trotted beside him, her puppies now grown into gangly adolescents that bounded through the training courses under Kate's watchful eye. Little Max, no longer so little, showed particular promise in the agility trials, her energy and intelligence drawing attention from search and rescue programs across the country. The latest test results came back from the FBI lab, Agent Chen announced, joining them in the observation area. They've identified 3 new variations of the surgical mesh. Reynolds was constantly modifying his technique. The discovery sent a chill through James as he watched Luna guide a recently rescued shepherd through basic confidence exercises. Each new detail they uncovered about Reynolds' operation revealed greater depths of calculation and cruelty. But we're ahead of him now, Sarah added, her typical optimism cutting through the darkness of the revelation. Our detection protocols are being implemented in clinics worldwide. The network is growing stronger every day. She was right. The educational programs they'd developed had already helped identify and save dozens of dogs. Hope's Haven had become a beacon of hope in the veterinary community, setting new standards for rehabilitation and recovery. Toronto just confirmed another rescue, Eleanor reported, updating their tracking system. Local vet recognized the surgical pattern from our training materials. Dogs already in protective custody, arriving here next week. The electronic map on the wall displayed an ever-growing constellation of points, each representing a life saved. A story changed. James remembered the lonely nights in his old clinic, hiding from his past, and marveled at how far they'd come. Dr. Mitchell, a familiar voice drew his attention. Officer Kate Sullivan stood in the doorway, her K9 unit uniform replaced by Hope's Haven's training gear. "There's someone here you should meet." She stepped aside to reveal a young woman in a wheelchair, accompanied by a service dog wearing a graduation vest from their program. The shepherd's proud bearing and gentle eyes reminded James of Hope. "This is Rachel," Kate introduced them, "and this is Shadow, one of Luna's first rehabilitation success stories. They've been working together for 3 months now." Rachel's eyes shone with gratitude as she reached down to pat Shadow's head. "He's changed my life," she said simply. "After my accident, I thought I'd never feel independent again. But Shadow, he understands exactly what I need, sometimes before I do." James knelt to greet Shadow, noting the subtle scar behind his ear, evidence of Reynolds's cruelty transformed into a mark of survival. The shepherd's calm confidence spoke volumes about his journey from victim to hero. "We have you to thank," Rachel continued. "All of you. What you've built here, what you're doing for these dogs. It's miraculous." The word caught James off guard. From his perspective, they were simply doing what needed to be done, helping one dog at a time. But looking around at the facility they'd created, he began to understand what Rachel meant. Hope's Haven had grown beyond his wildest dreams. The main building housed state-of-the-art surgical suites and recovery wards. The training center offered specialized programs for law enforcement, service dog preparation, and therapeutic support. Every aspect was designed to honor each dog's individual journey while preparing them for meaningful futures. "Tommy's class is here for their weekly training session," Sarah announced, gesturing toward the entrance where Mrs. Henderson's fourth graders filed in excitedly. The children's involvement had become a cornerstone of their rehabilitation program, providing gentle socialization for recovering dogs while teaching young people about compassion and responsibility. Hope immediately perked up at the sight of the children. She had developed an extraordinary talent for matching each dog with the right young handler, ensuring positive experiences for both. James watched as she guided a shy rescue toward Tommy, who had shown a special gift for working with traumatized animals. "The prosecutor's office called," Agent Chen mentioned quietly, drawing James aside. "Reynolds' trial starts next month. They'll need you to testify about Max's case." The prospect of facing his former mentor in court should have terrified him, but James felt only a calm resolve. The truth about Max's death had freed him from the guilt he'd carried for so long. "I'll be ready," he assured her. "Those dogs deserve justice." The sound of excited barking drew their attention to the training yard, where Kate was putting Max through an advanced search and rescue exercise. The young shepherd's performance was remarkable, her natural intelligence enhanced by months of careful training. "She's going to outshine us all," Kate predicted proudly. "Search and rescue teams from 3 states are competing to get her when she completes certification." Luna watched her young protege from the sidelines, her own role now focused on helping rehabilitate new rescues. Together with Hope, she had become instrumental in assessing and supporting traumatized dogs, showing them a path to recovery by example. "We've come full circle," Sarah observed, joining them at the window. "From that night, Hope stumbled into the clinic, to this." She gestured at the bustling facility around them. "You've built something extraordinary here, Dr. Mitchell." James shook his head. "We all built this. Every person who believed in the mission, every dog who trusted us with their recovery, every community member who stepped up to help." The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the dedication plaque mounted near the entrance. Hope's Haven, where every end is a new beginning. Below it hung a collection of photographs. Hope, on that first rainy night, Luna. During her recovery, and in the center, a memorial image of K9 Officer Max. Seattle Metropolitan called again, Sarah mentioned, her voice careful. They want to implement our rehabilitation protocols. They're asking if you'd consider consulting on their program. The request would have once sent James running for the safety of isolation. Now, he felt only a quiet determination to ensure his former hospital learned to do better. Set up the meeting, he decided. It's time they understood what real veterinary care looks like. Rachel wheeled over to join them, Shadow moving smoothly beside her chair. I heard some of your dogs are training for the K9 detection program, she said. Mind if we watch? Shadow loves seeing the other dogs work. The training yard had come alive with activity. Kate ran Max through increasingly complex search patterns while Luna worked with a new rescue on basic commands. Hope supervised it all, moving between groups with natural authority. 3 years ago, James mused, watching the scene, I thought my career was over. I was hiding in a small-town clinic, turning away cases because I was afraid of making another mistake. And now, Rachel prompted gently, now I understand what Hope knew all along, that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken, it's about building something stronger from the pieces. Tommy approached with his latest training partner, a formerly shy shepherd, now walking confidently at his side. Dr. Mitchell, watch what we learned today. The boy and dog demonstrated a perfect series of trust-building exercises, their mutual pride evident in every movement. It was moments like these that reminded James why they'd created Hope's Haven. Not just to rehabilitate animals, but to foster connections that change both human and canine lives. Ready for the next challenge? Kate called out, setting up a complex rescue scenario. Max bounded forward eagerly, her focus absolute as she awaited instructions. James watched his extended family work together. Staff, volunteers, dogs, and community members all united in purpose. The weight of his past mistakes had transformed into the foundation for something remarkable, something that would continue to grow and evolve long after Reynolds's trial ended. Hope pressed against his leg, her wise eyes meeting his with that same trust she'd shown on that first desperate night. She had taught him that sometimes the greatest acts of healing come from those who have been most deeply wounded. The federal courthouse in Helena loomed before James, its granite steps crowded with reporters and camera crews. 3 weeks into Reynolds's trial, public interest had only intensified as the full scope of the operation came to light. Ready? Agent Chen asked quietly, standing beside him at the bottom of the steps. Today would be James's turn to testify, to finally tell the truth about Max's death and everything that followed. Hope sat calmly at his feet, specially cleared to accompany him as a therapy dog. Her presence had been instrumental in helping other witnesses through their testimony, particularly the veterinary staff who had unknowingly assisted in Reynolds' scheme. More than ready, James replied, surprised to find he meant it. The fear that had driven him into hiding in Cedar Grove had been replaced by a steady determination to see justice done. Inside the courtroom, Reynolds sat between his lawyers, his once immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. Their eyes met briefly as James took the stand, and for a moment he caught a glimpse of the mentor he had once admired. Dr. Mitchell, the prosecutor began, Please tell the court about your first encounter with irregularities in Dr. Reynolds' surgical program. James described that fateful day 3 years ago, the routine surgery on K9 Officer Max that had gone terribly wrong. The mysterious complications that didn't match any known patterns, the disappearing records that might have revealed the truth. And now, with your current knowledge of Dr. Reynolds' surgical techniques, what can you tell us about Max's death? The complications weren't random, James explained, his voice steady. The surgical mesh found in Hope and Luna matched the traces. Found in Max's tissue samples. He was used to test their smuggling technique, and when something went wrong, they let you take the blame, the prosecutor finished. Made you believe you had failed. Reynolds shifted in his seat, his composed facade cracking slightly as James detailed the technical evidence linking Max's death to the broader conspiracy. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as the full picture emerged. How a respected veterinary researcher had twisted his skills to create an international smuggling operation. Your Honor, Reynolds' lawyer interrupted, my client's innovative surgical techniques have advanced veterinary medicine significantly. His research has saved countless animal lives. Objection, the prosecutor cut in. Dr. Reynolds' other work is not at issue here. We're discussing specific criminal acts. The judge agreed, but James couldn't help remembering how Reynolds had used similar arguments to justify his actions that night at the airfield. Progress at any cost, even if that cost was measured in suffering. During the lunch recess, James found Kate waiting outside the courtroom with Luna. The shepherd's recovery had been complete enough for her to begin K9 training, her natural abilities, enhanced by her experiences rather than diminished. The jury needs to understand, Kate said softly, scratching behind Luna's ears. These aren't just cases of animal cruelty. Each dog was chosen deliberately, used against their nature. The betrayal goes deeper than physical wounds. Back on the stand, James explained how Hope's arrival at his clinic had started unraveling the entire operation. As he described the ultrasound discovery, Reynolds finally showed emotion, a flash of anger quickly masked. Dr. Mitchell, the prosecutor continued, please tell us about Hope's Haven and the rehabilitation protocols you've developed. This was the part of his testimony James had been waiting for. He described how each rescued dog had contributed to their understanding, how Hope and Luna had shown them the way to help others heal. We've rehabilitated 37 dogs so far, he reported. 23 have been placed in law enforcement or service roles. The others work as therapy dogs or have been adopted by carefully screened families. The evidence mounted throughout the afternoon: surgical records, shipping manifests, banking transactions that traced the operation's international scope. But it was the before and after videos of the rescued dogs that seemed to affect the jury most deeply. This is Hope on her first night at the clinic, James narrated as the footage played. And this is Hope now, working with new rescues, helping them recover. The transformation was remarkable. From a desperate, injured survivor to a confident therapy dog who had helped countless others heal. During cross-examination, Reynolds' lawyer tried to paint James as a failed surgeon seeking revenge. Isn't it true that you left Seattle Metropolitan in disgrace? That your career was effectively over before this alleged discovery? I left because I believed I had failed a patient, James replied calmly. Dr. Reynolds encouraged that belief, used my guilt to ensure I wouldn't look too closely at what really happened. But Hope changed everything. She showed me that healing is possible even from the deepest wounds. As he stepped down from the witness stand, James caught sight of Tommy in the public gallery, sitting with his Aunt Sarah. The boy had insisted on being there to support the dogs he had helped train, his young face serious as he took notes for a school project about justice. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements, but James focused on the small group waiting by the car: Elena, Cooper, Sarah, and Kate, along with Hope and Luna. They had become more than colleagues or friends. They were partners in something larger than themselves. Channel 7 wants to do a feature on Hope's Haven, Sarah mentioned as they drove back to Cedar Grove. They're interested in showing how the rehabilitation program works, how the dogs help each other recover. The idea of more publicity still made James uncomfortable, but he understood its importance. Each story they shared might help another clinic identify a victim, might prevent another dog from suffering as Max had. Hope's Haven was quiet when they arrived, the evening staff handling the regular routines. In the training yard, Max, Hope's determined daughter, was working with a group of search and rescue trainees, her focus and energy drawing admiring comments from the instructors. "She's going to be something special," Kate predicted, watching the young shepherd navigate a complex search pattern. Just like her mother, but in her own way, the next morning brought news that would change everything. Agent Chen arrived early, her expression both grave and satisfied. "Reynolds cracked," she announced. "Started talking last night after your testimony. He's naming names, locations, everyone involved." The implications were staggering. Reynolds' confession would lead to investigations across multiple countries, shutting down similar operations and potentially saving hundreds of dogs from exploitation. "It's not over," Chen cautioned. "We'll need your expertise as we process new rescues, develop rehabilitation programs in other locations. Hope's Haven could become the model for similar centers worldwide." James watched through the window as Hope guided a newly arrived shepherd through its first interaction with the therapy team. The dog's fear was evident in its posture, but Hope's gentle presence seemed to assure it that healing was possible. "We'll be ready," he promised. "Whatever these dogs need, however long it takes. This is just the beginning." The autumn sun cast long shadows across Hope's Haven's expanded grounds, highlighting the changes they'd made and the work still to come. What had started with one desperate dog on a rainy night had grown into something none of them could have imagined. In the distance, Max's distinctive bark announced another successful training exercise. The sound carried hope and promise. The next generation, carrying forward their mission of healing and transformation. Reynolds' trial would end, but their real work, the daily miracle of helping broken spirits heal, would continue. The verdict came down on a crisp autumn morning, exactly 1 year after Hope had first limped into James's clinic. The courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to deliver Reynolds' sentence, the weight of countless victims, both animal and human, hanging in the air. "Dr. Victor Reynolds," the judge began, her voice carrying through the hushed chamber, "your actions represent not only a betrayal of the veterinary profession, but a calculated exploitation of the trust between humans and animals. The court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison." James sat between Kate and Agent Chen, hope pressed reassuringly against his leg. As the judge detailed the additional penalties, fines, restitution, lifetime ban from veterinary practice, he thought about how much had changed since that rainy night that had started everything. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the court orders all assets seized from the operation be liquidated, with proceeds going to establish additional rehabilitation centers based on the Hope's Haven model. The announcement sent a ripple of murmurs through the courtroom. This meant their work would expand, reaching more victims and creating new opportunities for healing across the country. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered around James and his team, cameras flashing as they asked about Hope's Haven's future. Sarah handled most of the questions, her natural warmth and enthusiasm making the center's mission clear to everyone listening. "This isn't just about rehabilitation," she explained, gesturing to where Hope sat calmly amid the chaos. "It's about transformation. Every dog we help becomes part of the solution, teaching us new ways to heal and connect." The drive back to Cedar Grove felt different somehow, as if a chapter had closed while another was just beginning. Luna rode in the back of Kate's K9 unit vehicle, her training vest identifying her as the newest member of the force's detection team. "Sometimes I wonder," Kate mused as they watched Luna demonstrate her skills at a stopover, "if she chose this work as a way to prevent what happened to her from happening to others." The thought struck a chord with James. Each dog they'd rehabilitated seemed to find its own way to turn trauma into purpose. Hope had become a master at calming new rescues, while her daughter Max excelled in search and rescue operations. Arriving at Hope's Haven, they found the facility buzzing with activity. The latest group of veterinary students from Montana State was attending a forensic training session, learning to identify signs of surgical trafficking. "Dr. Mitchell," Tommy called out, running to meet them with an official-looking envelope. "This came while you were gone. It's from the American Veterinary Association." James opened the letter to find an invitation to receive their highest humanitarian award, recognizing Hope's Haven's groundbreaking work in animal rehabilitation and veterinary forensics. "They want us to develop a standardized training program." Sarah read over his shoulder, her excitement growing. "Share our protocols with veterinary schools nationwide." The recognition felt surreal after years of hiding in his small-town clinic. But James knew it wasn't really about him. It was about Hope, Luna, and every dog that had shown them the way forward. In the training yard, Max was working with her latest search and rescue team, her focus absolute as she located hidden targets with unprecedented accuracy. Her siblings had found their own paths, one as a therapy dog at the children's hospital, another excelling in agility competitions, all of them carrying forward their mother's legacy of resilience. Agent Chen called. Elena reported, joining them with fresh files. Reynolds' confession led to raids in 6 countries. They're already asking if we can help coordinate rehabilitation efforts internationally. The scope of their work had grown beyond anything James could have imagined that first night with Hope. The small clinic had evolved into a comprehensive center that combined medical care, rehabilitation, training, and research. "We'll need to expand again," Sarah said practically, already making notes. "More recovery wards, larger training facilities. The new property next door just went up for sale." James watched as Hope moved through her evening rounds, checking on each resident with gentle authority. She paused at Luna's old recovery space, now occupied by a recently rescued shepherd showing signs of similar surgical trauma. "Remember when you thought you couldn't handle emergency cases?" Sarah asked softly, following his gaze. "When you were too afraid of making another mistake?" The memory of his self-imposed isolation felt distant now, transformed by Hope's unwavering trust and the support of the community that had rallied around their cause. A commotion at the front desk drew their attention. Kate was leading in a police officer from Vancouver who had arrived with their newest resident, a German shepherd rescued from a trafficking operation they'd helped uncover. "This is Sierra," Kate introduced the trembling dog. Local vet recognized the surgical patterns from our training materials, got her out before they could move her. Hope immediately approached the newcomer, her calming presence already working its magic. Behind her, Luna's puppies watched with interest from their training area, representing the next generation of healing and hope. Chief Matthews called. Cooper announced, arriving with more news. States implementing mandatory screening protocols for all canine units based on our recommendations. They want Kate to head up the training program. Each small victory added up to something larger, a growing network of protection and prevention that would make Reynolds' kind of operation increasingly difficult to maintain. As evening settled, over Hope's Haven, James found himself in his old office, now part of a larger administrative complex. The worn desk, where he'd once hidden from the world, had become a planning center for international rehabilitation efforts. "Dr. Mitchell," a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Rachel wheeled into the doorway, Shadow walking perfectly beside her chair. "We're here for our advanced training certification. Mind if we watch Max's evening session?" James led them to the observation area overlooking the training yard. Max was demonstrating a complex search pattern, her movements precise and confident. Below, Hope worked with Sierra, showing the same patience she'd exhibited with every new arrival. "I keep thinking about that night," James said quietly, watching Hope guide Sierra through her first tentative steps toward trust. "How close I came to turning her away. One moment of fear almost stopped all of this from happening." Rachel smiled, scratching Shadow's ears. "But you didn't turn her away. You chose to help, even though you were afraid. That's what really matters." The truth of her words settled around him like a warm blanket. Every day at Hope's Haven represented another choice to help, to heal, to move forward despite fear or uncertainty. A new group of volunteers arrived for evening orientation, their excited voices carrying through the facility. Sarah had developed a comprehensive training program that prepared them to assist with everything from basic care to specialized rehabilitation exercises. "The university called again," she mentioned, joining them with the day's reports. "They want to add a veterinary forensics concentration to their program, using our cases as teaching materials." Outside, the sun set behind Cedar Grove's mountains, painting the sky in shades of hope and promise. What had begun with one injured dog had grown into a movement, a mission that would continue to evolve and expand long after Reynolds' case faded. From headlines, "You know what Max would think of all this?" Kate asked, watching her former partner's namesake lead another successful search exercise. "He'd be proud. This is exactly the kind of legacy he deserved." Hope appeared in the doorway, her gentle eyes holding the wisdom of all she'd survived and all she'd helped others overcome. She had transformed from a desperate survivor into a beacon of healing, showing everyone at Hope's Haven that the deepest wounds could become the strongest foundations for change. The sunset painted Cedar Grove's mountains in brilliant hues as James stood in Hope's Haven's courtyard, watching Hope guide yet another rescued shepherd toward healing. 1 year had passed since Reynolds' sentencing, and their work had expanded beyond anything he could have imagined that first rainy night. Hope's puppies had grown into remarkable dogs themselves, Max leading search and rescue missions, her siblings excelling in therapy work and law enforcement. Luna continued her canine duties, her success story inspiring police departments nationwide to adopt their screening protocols. The facility had become a global model for rehabilitation, with similar centers opening across 3 continents. Every day brought new challenges, new survivors, new opportunities to transform trauma into triumph. As James watched Hope work her gentle magic with their newest resident, he remembered the frightened vet who had once hidden from his past in a small-town clinic. Hope had taught him that sometimes the greatest acts of healing come from those who have been most deeply wounded. The German Shepherd's legacy would continue through every life touched, every heart healed, every second chance given at Hope's haven. For in the end, it wasn't just about saving dogs. It was about showing the world that with love, patience, and understanding, any wound could become a wellspring of hope. If you were moved by Hope's journey from survival to healing, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of courage, redemption, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts on this remarkable tale of transformation.